Okay, guys, welcome back to English with Phil Norris. I am excited. Why am I excited? First of all, I have my llama picture right here. My plan is to do a different picture each time, or different item each time, and hang it here. I think it'll be funny. But I'm excited because this is my first English vocabulary and idiom lesson. So my plan is to do a video, simple videos each day or at least every 2 days, where I teach an idiom and I teach a vocabulary word. So these words will oftentimes, I get them out of a book that focuses on the TOEFL. Yet they're words that will be useful with everyday language. You'll hear them every day, or you might hear them in conversation, or you will hear them in movies if you're watching movies in English, or you'll see the subtitles. You'll see the subtitles in English, and these will help you along your English journey. It will be useful to listen to quickly each day, watch the lesson, and then if you are confused, you can always go back and see if I've covered a word, if I've spoken or taught a word or taught an idiom. If you come across a word or an idiom I haven't covered in an English lesson, please comment that below, because then I can save that for the future. I'll keep a list and then I'll add that in to a lesson. Or even if it's a word you know that you think other people might not know, or you think it's an idiom you know that other people might not know, please comment down below and I will make a lesson about it. So, let's get right into today's lesson with Phil Norris. So my word that I'll be covering is mediocre. Mediocre. It's right here, mediocre. And what do you think that word means? Say it out loud with me. Mediocre. It's an interesting word. Mediocre. So mediocre means to be of moderate quality or ability. So what does that mean? That's kind of confusing too. So a perfect example of mediocre is when I was young. I played 2 sports. I used to play soccer and I played baseball. And I was really, really good. I was exceptional at baseball. I hit doubles, which means you get to second base. So there's first and then second. So I'd hit doubles, and I'd hit triples, which means you go to 3 bases. And I'd hit home runs, which means I'd hit it over the fence. I was really good at throwing. I was a catcher, so I caught pitches. There's a pitcher that would throw the baseball, and then I was a catcher. So I'd be behind the plate catching the ball and then throwing it back. So I was an exceptional catcher. I was an exceptional hitter. I was an exceptional baseball player. But I was mediocre at soccer. Mediocre meaning I wasn't very good. I was kind of average or below average at soccer. And so I had the decision to make if I would stay in soccer and keep working hard and improving at being a soccer player. Because I was mediocre, I had a lot of room for improvement, or I had the choice to quit soccer and focus on what I was really good at. Now, in reality, I'm mediocre at a lot of things. I'm in business now. I am an exceptional creative writer. But sometimes I'm pretty mediocre, pretty below average or average at catching my mistakes or copy editing is what they call it. So there's copywriting, which means you're writing all the essays or the ads for a company, and then there's copy editing. So there's a skill or someone who does copy editing. They read everything I write, and they catch all the errors and the mistakes. And so sometimes I'm not very good at it, and I'm a native English speaker. I've been speaking English my entire life. but I don't catch errors sometimes. That's something I'm working on improving on. We want to be excellent. We want to be exceptional. We want to be very good. We don't want to be mediocre. Mediocre means we're just okay. We're average. And it's okay to be mediocre. It's okay to be mediocre as long as you're moving forward and trying to improve. The first step is to find what you're mediocre at to improve. The first step in improving is to find what you're mediocre at. So right now, as an English learner, you might be great at listening and understanding. You might be exceptional at listening and understanding English, but you might be mediocre at speaking English. And that's okay. That's okay to be mediocre in conversation right now. But you've got to be taking the steps to improve. So you've got to be speaking to people in English. So you might not have that. I know that's a complaint a lot of the time, is that you don't have someone to speak English to. You can still practice dialogue in your head. You can practice speaking with yourself back and forth or talk out loud. I do this when I give speeches. Because even as an English speaker, it's sometimes hard to memorize you want to make sure that you're giving the best speech possible, that you're projecting, that you're being exciting, but not too exciting, but being exciting. So instead of knowing that if you don't practice, you'll be mediocre, I practice in a mirror, and I practice giving my speech, practice giving it in different ways, seeing how it sounds to me. I practice recording it and watching it again so that I can see where I messed up or where I struggled so that the next time I practice speaking it, I'll be exceptional. So that's my advice to you is if you're a mediocre English speaker, practice speaking to yourself in a mirror, practice recording yourself. I know it's a little weird, it's uncomfortable to watch yourself. I don't like watching my lessons, but it will help you along the way. But again, our word today is mediocre. We're all mediocre at something. We're always mediocre right when we start, or in the first year even when we start. It takes so much practice to become really good at something. And that's why you've got to practice every day. You've got to practice 20, 30 minutes. It's about consistency, which is another good word. That's one of my favorite words. But consistency means just doing something on a regular basis, doing it frequently, doing it often. So that in the way of English learning is watching videos of English teachers like me, learning new words and practicing them, listening to movies, listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks. I love audiobooks. But this will take you from being mediocre at something. So like I said, being mediocre means moderately okay or moderately good at something, or even like below average to average at something, to being excellent. If you take the steps, you make a plan, you work hard, you practice every day, and you'll eventually become excellent. It clicks. I'm sure you've heard this before. When something clicks, all of a sudden you get over this difficulty. Something's really hard as you're going up the hill, but then all of a sudden it clicks and you hit the top of the hill, and then everything seems easy after that. So again, I am mediocre at a lot of things. I'm average to below average. But with practice and preparation, you can be excellent at things. So let's use it again one more time in a sentence. Let's use mediocre in a sentence one more time. So because Brad didn't practice every day at English learning and English speaking, he was mediocre at... Let's do a different one. I'm trying to think of how to explain this one. So, because Brad didn't practice English learning and English speaking every day, Brad did mediocre on his test in English. So you can do mediocre on an exam, which means you did average or below average. That's like a C or a D. Or you can even a B sometimes, depends on who you are. Or you can be mediocre at something. So you can do mediocre on a test. You can be mediocre in just one instance. So in a game, so you might be good at a sport, but you were mediocre that day because your mind wasn't ready, you weren't prepared, you didn't feel good. So you can do mediocre in a game, so it's just one instance, or you could just be mediocre at something, at one thing. So you could be mediocre at an entire sport. You could just be mediocre at soccer because you haven't practiced, you're not very good, you're not very committed. So that's what mediocre means. I know it's a long lesson, but I think it's important to understand the word mediocre, and to understand too, kind of that, it's applicable to English learning, because there's always something new to learn. There's different parts of English learning. There's speaking, there's reading, there's writing, there's listening, and you might be good in two areas of English learning. You might be good at speaking and listening, but you might be mediocre, below average, at writing. So it's worth knowing that so that you can then plan on practicing, working harder in that area you're mediocre in. Let me know if you have any questions down below, if that makes sense to everybody. So let's move on to the idiom. I don't want this video, most of the time I want these videos to be short. I don't want these videos to be very long, because then they drag on and you just sit there listening like, when is Phil gonna get the point across? I get it. Stop hammering it home. Stop hammering it home means stop repeating yourself over and over and over again. You're getting 2 idioms today. But so hammering it home means just repeating yourself over and over again after I already kind of understand what you're saying. But it's important for me to do that so that you know and understand that word, but also know how to use it and know how to apply that word if you hear it or if you want to use it in the future in conversations. So let's move on to our idiom. So my idiom for today, and I wrote it down here, let me check, is back to the drawing board. Back to the drawing board, right here. So back to the drawing board means to start from the beginning. So an example of this is that, let's say that you create a project. You're in a class. We all have projects, which we have to do with a group, or you might have a project by yourself or an assignment. Or even, and a better example is an essay. I do this all the time. So you're writing an essay, and you get done writing your essay, and then you start reading it. And you realize that it's not very good, or it's mediocre, it's average, and so you probably should go back to the drawing board, which means you should start all over again. Go back to the start, go back to the drawing board, create a plan, and then write a new essay. I've done this a ton of times, both in school, in my college classes. I did this a little bit in grad school. I did this with my graduate school essay for my MBA. I have done this with my English lessons in the past, my English essays. Sometimes you gotta go back to the drawing board because it's not very good. Or even you have a better idea. Sometimes your original idea is really good, but you have a better idea. So you've got to go back to the drawing board and create a plan. The drawing board's kind of like a whiteboard. Imagine a big whiteboard or a chalkboard that you write your plan on. And you're writing and brainstorming your plan. That's kind of what that means, is to go back to the drawing board means to go back to the start, come up with a new plan, and then that's when you can start again afterwards, and you can begin writing a new essay. And this goes for a lot of different things. You could even, let's say a funny example would be that when I was younger, I was kind of a wild kid, and I liked to ride bikes, and I liked to get hurt, and I lived on the edge. I was kind of a crazy kid. So, for example, I would ride my bike and make ramps, which is something you could jump off of into the air. And sometimes they would be dangerous. And I would build this ramp, it'd be really big, and I would go to ride off of it, and I would hurt myself because of how I built the ramp, because of how I built this thing. Maybe it was the vertical jump was too high, and I couldn't land on the ground without hurting myself. And so I would go off of it, I would jump off, and I would try to land on my bike, and I would crash and hurt myself. And jokingly, I would say, well, that didn't work. So now it's time to go back to the drawing board. Time for me to look at the ramp that I built and see how I can redesign it so that next time when I jump off of it, it will have a good angle for me so I can land on the other side. That's another example of going back to the drawing board. So you can use that anytime you have to start again on something, anytime you have to, a plan doesn't work, you just say, okay, it's time to go back to the drawing board. It's time to come up with a new plan. It's time to come up with a different plan. People do it all the time. Failure is a common thing. Failure is a part of life. We have to fail to succeed. We have to fail. I think it was Thomas Edison who came up with the light bulb that failed, I want to say 1,000 times is the story, but then on the 1,001 time, he created the light bulb, and he changed the world as we know it. So failure is good. Failure teaches us what we did wrong, where we're mediocre, what areas we were mediocre in, what areas we got right, what areas we were excellent in, and then we go back to the drawing board, and we take all the good parts and keep them, but then we take all the mediocre parts, all the average parts, or even the bad parts that we don't need, and then we improve upon them. So we combine them together and we make something great. So that's our lesson for today. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. Again, if you have any vocabulary words you want me to cover, if you have any idioms you want me to cover, or even any topics you want me to cover in future English lessons, comment them down below. Like my video and subscribe if you want to keep getting new English lessons from me, Phil Norris. I will continue to teach as long as there's a need. And so let me know if you have any ideas for content. I know that the landscape, that different YouTube videos attract attention. So if you want more active videos, if you want more cuts in my videos, which means like changes in how the camera is focused, let me know. And again, like and subscribe. Remember, if you're mediocre in something, make a plan, go back to the drawing board, and then start from there and improve until you become excellent at something. Thank you again for listening, and until next time, this is Phil Norris with English Lessons.